Welcome to today's episode of Insights with Us. I'm Anastasia, a licensed professional counselor, owner of Happy Mind Wellness Company, a Colorado-based therapy practice, and creator of this podcast. My goal is to use this platform to help others find their voice as we share our journeys and show support as we learn more about ourselves in life. Growth happens when we get uncomfortable, which happens when we sit with new ideas we haven't sat with before. I hope that we can work on this journey of personal growth and understanding together. As a disclaimer, there may be swearing in this podcast. Sometimes, not in this episode, I don't think, but sometimes we get caught up in the human experience. It happens. And sometimes we can talk about difficult or activating topics. So maybe put on some headphones if you need to, and remember that support exists for you if you want it. Also, just as a little update, I am working on finding ways to add sponsorship options. So if you want to write a letter to a loved one or just throw something out there, you might have a chance to do that on this podcast soon. Stay tuned for more updates. Today, I want to talk about something we all struggle with in different ways: change. Some of us handle it better than others, but overall, we humans love routine. And honestly, I have been changing up my routine and my environment quite a bit over the past month and a half, which has led to a lot of emotional discomfort, growth, and insight. I thought I would share a little bit about this journey and talk about how I'm navigating it and how others have been responding to it in an attempt to help others struggling with change feel a little less alone. This is my own personal journey, not based in fact, but based in emotion and experience. I will also end this episode with some tips and tricks to kind of navigate when we're struggling. I am excited and also maybe a little bit nervous to get vulnerable with you. So let's get started and see if we can build some insight today. If you have listened to any of my previous episodes, you would know that I am a third culture kid. I grew up all over the world. And I'm hoping to have some friends and connections come on the podcast later this year to share in these experiences more. So again, stay tuned. I'm so excited for what 2025 has to hold. But I didn't just live somewhere else. I was constantly moving. In fact, recently I went through the timeline of my life and realized that I have moved houses every 2 to 4 years my whole life. Not just as a kid, as an adult too. And I'm sharing this story with you today because there is always more to a story when someone has an adverse reaction that you don't understand. And I want you to understand all these different layers so that you can know what it means to be curious about that reaction. This year, I moved again. I still have boxes around me. It is brand new. It was a good move. A move that I had planned and wanted and prepared for, and yet I found myself having panic attacks like I used to when I was younger. I had flashes of previous moves that did not go according to plan or left me feeling more alone and isolated than I could have imagined. And even though this move was what I wanted, my body has struggled to feel excited about it. Now, at the time of this recording, I'm feeling pretty excited about this move, but it's new. That's a new feeling. I started realizing this panic, this stress, this body reaction early last year. And I took most of last year as an opportunity to do some healing work, to be open with my family and friends about the panic that my body felt instead of pushing it down. And I had a whole host of reactions to this, some helpful, some not so much. I learned that everyone has a different definition of what moving means. For example, my brother only counts moving if he has to change states or countries. If he just moves a house, it doesn't count in his mind. Whereas with me, I count moving as any time I have to pack up all of my stuff and physically move it somewhere else and resettle. Extra points if I have to build new community, like when I moved from Abu Dhabi to Fort Collins, or even just Fort Collins to Golden. I also learned that the majority of people classify moving as an exciting adventure to celebrate and are often confused when you are not as excited as them. I received a lot of feedback like, "Oh, that's amazing, you must be happy," or "That's exciting, you're going to have so much fun." And if I told them that I would have fun eventually, but honestly, I'm really just stressed right now. The reaction was usually to brush it aside. Oh, you don't really mean that. Or, no, really, it'll be fine. Think about all the fun that you're going to have. It's like, yes, I know that's there, but right now that's not my experience. And this is where the layers of my emotional reaction get complicated. Because yes, there is excitement within me somewhere. And yes, I know that it will be fun. But no, I was not excited in that moment. And no, all the change and logistics and transitioning was not very fun. In fact, because I've moved so much, I've had some pretty traumatic experiences with different moves. I've had some good and seamless moves too, but those are not causing this reaction within me. So we're not going to spend too much time on the good moves today. My first big and stressful move I remember was back in January of 2002 when we moved to the UAE for the first time. We moved right after 9/11, and we weren't even sure if we were going to move at first. There was a lot of uncertainty, and are we not? Is it okay? Is it not okay? What's going to happen? And when we eventually moved there, I remember us running evacuation drills in case that part of the world decided to attack Americans. Fortunately, we were safe, but it is a memory that is cemented into my brain. When we moved to Indonesia the second time, we had just lost my grandma and my uncle, and my childhood dog ended up getting sick in quarantine. The irony is not lost on me on that one. And she died 3 days after getting out. This was one of the darkest times in my life, and I had no idea how to hold the pain and the grief that I felt. And in my mind, apparently, I associated it with the move. And then when I moved to America for college, I got off the plane and my brother picked me up at the airport and said, "Welcome to America. We don't have a place to live right now." There were wildfires that had evacuated him, and we ended up having to crash on one of his friends' couches for weeks prior to me actually getting to settle in. All of these moments have compiled on top of each other, one after another, and it has led to anxiety and panic anytime I tried to move. And because it all seemed like isolated incidents where nothing truly bad ever actually happened to me or my health, no one really thought to process it with me. And I never thought that it was something that I needed to give attention to. Now, looking back, I can see how much it all affected me and how much I needed to process it. But again, I never did until last year. The first time I started to realize the effect that all of this had on me was actually back in 2019. I was deliberating moving in with my then partner, and I was starting to feel that panic and that worry. But my family and my partner convinced me that it was fine, that there was nothing that was going to go wrong, that there was no rush, that I could take my time. I know all of you know what's coming next, but my family told me that I could visit them anytime I wanted to, and that there was no way I was going to end up being abandoned or left alone or whatever fears I was having. They all just brushed them aside. Didn't count, didn't matter, don't worry about it, don't be anxious. Again, this is exciting, right? So I pushed through my anxiety, told myself that I was crazy for feeling that way, and moved in with my partner and several of his friends in March of 2020, a week before lockdown. I didn't get to see my family again for over a year. This only solidified the belief in my body that moving was unsafe. Again, I am sharing these stories with you to give you an example of how different layers can impact our reactions. And change is often a catalyst of those adverse reactions that we struggle to understand. If my loved ones find out I'm moving and tell me how amazing it is and I burst into tears, well, it's not because it's horrible or my life is over. It's because of decades of difficult moments like these compounding on top of each other, leading to my mind and my body not knowing how to feel safe when I change environments. But I am safe. I am excited. I do want this move that I'm in the middle of and continuing to cultivate peace with. And yet, My body keeps wondering if another pandemic is going to happen and I won't see my family again for a year or two. My anxiety keeps checking in with Juliet's health and making sure that she is okay because I don't want to say goodbye to her suddenly without notice while she's still young. The protectors within me keep telling me that I'm missing something. Another shoe will drop, that I need to fight to protect my peace. Another part of me keeps trying to push it all away and distract because I've had this anxiety around moving within me for so long. This part of me is afraid of what will happen if I actually sit with it. So what did I spend this last year doing? Well, sitting with it, for one. But I also built a mantra around it. And it's what I tell myself, it's what I tell my friends, it's what I tell my family, which is just because I am anxious does not mean I am incapable of handling this change. I am extremely capable. I will be fine, and I will be excited. I'm just going to cry a lot while I settle in. And random topics of conversation or shifts in the space will make me anxious for a while. I can't just tell my mind to calm down and be happy. I have to give my mind and my body space to be scared, to be nauseous, to cry, in order to help it find regulation in my nervous system, and to teach my body to trust that I am safe. So what does this look like? First, it's finding people who can see this part of me without judgment or shame. I am so grateful to have cultivated a support system that can hear all of these layers. And when I cry, they don't try to convince me that it will all be okay, that there's no reason to be anxious. Instead, they let me cry. They show me I'm safe by letting the tears flow and just existing with me. They reassure me that so far I can still visit my family. And they choose dog-friendly activities so I can keep an eye on Juliet while we both transition, which I am so happy for because her separation anxiety has been unparalleled. It can also help to find spaces to cry and process what you've been through, even if it is just in the shower by yourself. Let the tears flow. If you don't have a support system where you can let that fear exist, find a space where you feel safe enough to let it exist alone. Let the pain and fear and doubt exist. It's okay that it's there. It's not trying to hurt you. It's trying to warn you. It's trying to make sure that you're paying attention. It doesn't necessarily mean it's real or it's true. I am safe. I am good. I am stable. And yet my brain keeps going, are you sure? Well, yeah, when I check in and think about it, I am sure. But I have to let the doubt exist first. Welcome it with curiosity and a lot of discomfort so that you can understand where the thoughts are coming from. That's what I did. And that's why I'm able to share with you all of these connections that lead to my panic. I can sit with that panic and go, oh, this is coming from that move. That means I'm stuck in this belief system, but that belief isn't real. This is what's actually real. Well, let me just move through this. If I trusted that automatic reaction, that automatic thought of you're not safe, don't do this, panic, well, then I wouldn't have chosen to make these life changes. I wouldn't have moved. Instead, I slowed down. I processed. I did some EMDR around it with a new therapist. I cried in sadness for 20 minutes while she witnessed me. It was terrifying. And I realized that the feeling of not being safe came from my past and is not indicative of my present. Letting it exist helped me realize it was old reactions to new situations, and that is not how I want to live my life. So I'm doing it scared, one baby step at a time. I have a panic attack, and then I make the next move that feels manageable. And you know what? I'm having fewer panic attacks. I'm feeling safer. And I can feel that excitement starting to grow inside of me. Another way to navigate these challenges is giving yourself permission to do less. Find shortcuts or hacks within your mental health so that you are still taking care of yourself, but you are not adding pressure by believing that you have to do it at 100% effort. For example, in my life, in this example we've been running through for the last 15 minutes, I am not unpacking everything immediately. That's why I still have boxes all around me. I am unpacking 1 or 2 boxes a day, which honestly is all Juliet has been letting me do with this confusion and the change. So it really does work out for both of us that I've slowed down in this way. But there are other kinds of mental health hacks that you can use when life gets hard, not just when you're moving. So let's run through some other options. If you don't want to get out of bed and start your day, maybe you roll onto the floor for a few minutes first and see how that feels. Because you deserve to have movement and a change of scenery, even if you don't want to leave the room. If you can leave the room, maybe you move to the couch. It's still doing something, and it still counts. If you don't want to take a shower, maybe you buy some body wipes and clean yourself off, because you deserve to be clean, even if you have no energy or feel down and can't get in the shower. For me, I get in the shower no matter what because the hot water helps with my anxiety and I fall asleep faster. But sometimes I only wash my body. Sometimes I only wash my face. Sometimes I just sit there and let the water run over me and do nothing. I am still doing a part of the routine, even if it isn't the whole routine. And eventually my entire body does get clean, one body part at a time. But if I skip the shower completely, that is a sign to me that I really am not doing okay that day. And I need to slow down even more tomorrow. If you don't want to brush your teeth and the recommended 2 minutes feels way too long, brushing your teeth for 10 or 20 seconds is better than not at all. Flossing with a pick is better than not flossing at all. If you don't want to get up and go for a walk or go to the gym, can you just walk back and forth across the living room for a few seconds? Can you just stand up and stretch and then sit back down? There are so many hacks that help your mental health without having to force yourself to do it all or do it at 100% effort. In fact, doing it all could add pressure and make it harder to even start the task. What counts? What is slightly more than nothing? Because the goal is not 100%. The goal is not 0. Change is hard, and it can cause us to worry or shut down or even isolate. But it is also something that we can navigate. And on the other side, there is a new normal for you to get used to. You are not alone, and you can do this, just like I did. I know you can. To end today, I want to guide you through one of my favorite meditations to get out of the spiral. Or like Mr. Gathercole and I talked about in our last episode, to leave the details, to zoom out, to broaden our focus. This is a meditation that is adapted from the book Mindful Yoga-Based Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, and is all about slowing down and noticing the small details in your life that make you smile. They're sweet, they're nice. And let's see if we can actually pay attention to them. So I want you to take a moment to see if you can get a little bit more comfortable. Maybe you pause this to really settle in before you hit play again. If you're driving, maybe you just roll your shoulders back or let your jaw release a little bit. Maybe take one hand and shake it and then switch and shake it. If you're sitting or relaxing or cooking, just pause for a moment and see if there's anything your body needs to slow down a little bit. Like a sip of your drink or a bite of that food before you really slow it down. And once you find that comfortable spot, you can either close your eyes or lower your gaze, or if you're driving, just be open to where your mind goes and take a deep breath in. we'll start just by noticing the sensation of breathing. How the belly expands on the inhales and collapses on the exhales. Inevitably, distractions will show up, whether they're sensations or thoughts, feelings or memories, or even sounds happening around you. Whatever shows up, breathe it in. Notice it on purpose, and then exhale and come right back to your breath. Inhale to notice that you got distracted, to acknowledge that it happened, and then exhale to come right back to my words and what I'm directing you to think about. Now I'd like for you to imagine that your history is stretched out before you, that you can reach back throughout your life to different moments. I want you to bring your attention to a moment that's of some sweetness for you, however small or seemingly insignificant it may seem. It could be something as simple as waking up before anyone else in the house and getting to use all the hot water in the shower. It could be a cup of coffee or tea that you really savored because of its flavor or just the warmth against your hand. It could be a moment with a pet where you just existed together. Or it could be a big memory like a vacation, or a moment that made you laugh or smile, or a sunset or sunrise. Whatever moment of sweetness occurs to you, pause there. We'll take a few breaths and really breathe into that moment. Allow yourself to be there behind your eyes and try to remember the details. If there are any colors that stand out to you, any sounds that you heard, or textures that you felt. If you were with someone or if you were alone, really be there. And then notice what it's like to be in that moment. And if your mind skips ahead, let that be okay. Just inhale to acknowledge that you got distracted and you moved your mind around. And exhale to return to your moment of sweetness. And if any bitterness or sadness shows up in that moment, like a sense of loss because someone in the memory is no longer in your life, just pause and notice that too. Then on your next exhale, bring yourself back to the memory and the details and that sweetness. Let yourself be there for just a few breaths longer. Then I want you to take another deep breath in. Then allow yourself to come back to this present moment. Notice the temperature of the air on your skin. Notice the ground beneath you, whether you're standing or sitting. Maybe you can feel the chair. Notice if there's any tension or neutrality in your body. Maybe there's a release of tension from sinking into that moment. And whatever is there, I also want you to decide how to wake up from this exercise today. If you want to roll the shoulders or shake your neck out or do a full body stretch. Maybe you suddenly realize you want to get outside and go enjoy the sunlight. Or maybe you want to sink into bed and get extra cozy. Whatever you notice, whatever you need, give yourself permission to do that today. And take care of you. And remember, the goal isn't to be at 100%. The goal is not 0. So you're already doing a great job. Give yourself credit for that. Hopefully, something we talked about today resonated with you. If it did, let yourself sit with that idea for a little while longer. If you have any questions for this podcast or any themes you'd like us to focus on in the future, send us a message on Instagram at insightswithuspodcast or send us an email at insightswithus@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to hear more, please follow, like, or subscribe. And if you want to support the continuation of this podcast, you can donate. You can find me, Anastasia Soroka, on buymeacoffee.com, or you can even choose to sponsor an episode. You can find me on Patreon at Insights With Us. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I appreciate that you are listening.